Great. I've got a couple of things. I have a couple of things for you. I think you will have seen earlier the Secretary General spoke at the memorial ceremony to mark the 30th anniversary of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. That event was organized by the Department of Global Communication and the Permanent Mission of Rwanda. The Secretary General, in his remarks, said the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda is a stain on our collective consciousness and a brutal reminder of the legacy of colonialism and hate speech. Those remarks were shared with you. Our Deputy Secretary General will be heading off to Chile in Santiago over the weekend to attend the 7th session of the Latin American and Caribbean Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. While there, she will also meet with senior government officials and engage with the UN regional directors of various entities, resident coordinators, and other stakeholders based in the region to accelerate the action on the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that follows the SDG Summit last year. And of course, the lead up to the Summit of the Future in September. The Undersecretary General for Policy, Guy Ryder, will also be part of the visit. The DSG will be back in New York on the 16th, on Tuesday. Turning to Gaza, our colleagues from the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that we had planned 2 humanitarian missions to northern Gaza today, but both were denied access by Israeli authorities. One of the missions was meant to deliver 20,000 liters of fuel to run backup power generators at Al-Ali Hospital, where medical personnel are still working to provide essential health care despite having no electricity. OCHA reports that within the past week, more than 40% of aid missions to northern Gaza were denied or impeded, including due to hostilities nearby. Humanitarian missions planned for areas south of Wadi Gaza were also denied access. Only one mission that required coordination was facilitated today by the Israeli authorities, and that mission provided health support to civilians in Khan Yunis. We and our humanitarian partners continue to do all we can to provide essential humanitarian services to people in Gaza wherever and whenever possible. As the acting humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Jamie McGoldrick, said earlier today, Israel's obligation to facilitate the flow of aid in Gaza do not end when those supplies are dropped off on the other side of the border. Aid organizations need to be able to deliver aid safely throughout Gaza. This means ensuring that our facilities and convoys are not targeted, granting and facilitating access for those convoys, not denying their movements, making sure that humanitarian missions move quickly and predictably through checkpoints, and allowing us to bring the supplies we need, fuel, trucks, and communications equipment as well. Turning to another humanitarian crisis, and that is in Haiti, where our humanitarian colleagues continue to deliver emergency assistance to people affected by the recent violence and despite the ongoing tensions. Yesterday, on March 11th, the World Food Program delivered 19,000 hot meals to displaced people in Port-au-Prince and in other provinces. 200,000 children received a school lunch. UNFPA and its partners continue to support reproductive health, to support productive protection services, and to provide hygiene kits and displacement sites in the capital through their mobile clinics. Since the beginning of March, more than 4,600 hygiene kits have been provided. Displaced women and girls are also receiving dignity kits, which include soap, sanitary pads, solar lamps, and other basic hygiene items. UNFPA and their partners also continue to provide remote psychosocial support and information on accessible gender-based violence services through a free hotline operated by their local partners. Since the 29th of February, more than 340 calls have been made. On the education side, our partners warn that many schools remain inaccessible because of the ongoing violence. Some of the schools have been occupied by armed gangs, others by displaced people, and some have just simply been looted or just destroyed. And this morning, our colleagues at the International Organization for Migration tell us that since the end of February, because of insecurity, close to 95,000 people have left Port-au-Prince metropolitan area to seek refuge in the provinces. Most of them are heading to Grand Sud departments, a region that has already received over 100,000 people fleeing violence in the capital in recent months. And as we've been telling you, those communities also that are trying to absorb the displaced people are already under stress. Moving to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our colleagues at our Humanitarian Affairs Department say they're deeply concerned about the precarious conditions and escalating threats facing displaced people in and around Goma. More than 500,000 people currently live in displacement sites around the city after fleeing clashes between the Congolese army and armed groups in the Masisi and the Rutshuru territory in North Kivu. Since early March, several incidents of shelling and accidental grenade explosions in and around displacement sites in Goma have killed 8 people and wounding 34. The proximity of the sites to the front lines and the presence of weapons within these sites is increasingly putting displaced people at risk. And turning to Ethiopia, I want to flag a couple of points on the high-level pledging event for the humanitarian situation in Ethiopia that will take place in Geneva on Tuesday, on April 16th, the day after the Sudan conference in Paris. The event is meant to raise international awareness and financial support to address the dire humanitarian needs and bolster the resilience of vulnerable people in Ethiopia. It's being co-hosted by ourselves, by Ethiopia, and the United Kingdom. Joyce Masuya, the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, will be in Geneva and address the event. Our humanitarian colleagues point out that conflict and back-to-back climate shocks have pushed more than 21 million people in Ethiopia into humanitarian needs this year. OCHA warns that 10.8 million people are projected to be critically food insecure in the lean season, which runs from July to September. Yet the country's humanitarian response plan for $3.2 billion is less than 5% funded. And turning to South Sudan, in response to seasonal intercommunal violence driven by cattle raids and competition over the scarce resources in the eastern Equatorial Budi and Ikoto counties in South Sudan, our peacekeeping mission there reports that peacekeepers facilitated a peace dialogue among feuding communities in the Kidepo Valley area. Key outcomes of the dialogue included agreements to hold perpetrators to account and introduce animal movement permits to prevent violence. These agreements are expected to reduce cattle rustling and revenge attacks, allowing for peaceful coexistence and the preservation of livelihoods. The already unstable situation in the area has worsened in recent months with frequent road ambushes. And also in South Sudan, our colleagues at OCHA says they worry about the rise of incidents hampering aid operations. OCHA reports more than 40 incidents affecting humanitarian access in South Sudan last month. 15 of those involve violence against humanitarian staff and impacted humanitarian assets. Other challenges include bureaucratic impediments and movement restrictions. These incidents were most prevalent in Upper Nile, Unity, and Jonglei, with 5 of the 6 attacks on humanitarian convoys in March reported in Jonglei. Meanwhile, people fleeing in neighboring Sudan continue to cross the border into South Sudan. Since the start of Sudan's conflict almost a year ago, more than 636,000 men, women, and children have arrived in South Sudan, obviously putting further strain on the already challenging humanitarian situation in South Sudan. This year's $1.8 billion humanitarian appeal for South Sudan is only just over 19% funded, which translates to $345 million US. Also appealing for money are our friends at World Food Program, who are warning today that 55 million people in West and Central Africa are struggling to feed themselves during the next lean season, which is between June and August. This is an increase of 4 million in the number of food insecure people as compared to previous forecasts published in November of last year. Economic challenges such as currency devaluation, soaring inflation, stagnation production, as well as trade barriers has worsened the food crisis, impacted people across the region in Nigeria and Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Mali being the worst affected. In response to these growing needs, WFP, FAO, UNICEF, and FAO call on national governments, international organizations, civil society, and the private sector to work on solutions to increase food security, enhance agricultural productivity, and mitigate the impact of economic volatility. Also today, you will see the Security Council held a meeting on threats to international peace and security. Briefing the council member was Ivor Fung, Chief of Conventional Arms Branch at the Office for Disarmament Affairs, and he noted that the provision of military assistance and transfer of arms and ammunition to Ukrainian armed forces have continued in the context of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, adding that reports related to the use of anti-personnel landmines and the transfer and use of cluster munitions in Ukraine are worrying. His remarks were shared with you. 2 international days to flag to you. One, which I hope will take us all out of here, is the International Day for Human Spaceflight. That's the plan for the weekend. This day celebrates the beginning of the space era for mankind. And on Sunday, we mark World Chagas Disease Day. It's a disease also known as the silent disease. Raising awareness of its is essential to improve the rates of treatment and cure. Habibti, please.
This morning, reporting suggesting that Iran is getting ready to respond within the next 48 hours. This is what is being reported. Is this something you're monitoring? Is the SG worried about that escalation? And does he have, or is he contacting any of the relevant parties?
Yes, of course, it's something he is following very closely. We're very worried about potential escalation in a situation that seems to be escalating on a daily basis. We have no inside information on any potential military activities by any of the parties in the region. Our message, which has been sent publicly and privately, is to avoid any escalation and to work towards de-escalation of the tensions.
Any contact with
Those messages have been passed, as I said, both privately and publicly.
Okay. And another question. At a congressional hearing this week, the USAID Administrator Samantha Power was asked about famine in Gaza, and she basically said that the assessment, there's a credible assessment that the famine has started in Gaza, and she was also citing the IPC analysis. Should we expect an update to that analysis, given that the time frame was mid-March to May?
As soon as our IPC colleagues at WFP, FAO, and others are ready to make an update, they will do so. But it is clear that the data in the IPC is extremely credible and extremely strong, and it's good to see that others are seeing it the same way. Deji.
Yes, hopefully I didn't miss anything for the question. I'm sorry
I'm sure
for about yesterday.
Attention, but tell me.
Yeah, for today, just to follow up on the humanitarian delivery to northern Gaza. When we're talking about the counterpart from Israeli authority, which counterpart are you contacting to get those humanitarian delivery? COGAT?
Well, we work with COGAT, as mentioned. Jamie McGoldrick has also met with Southern Command, but COGAT is the primary operational contact for the UN.
So COGAT denied the 2 humanitarian deliveries to northern Gaza?
Which Israeli entity passed along the message, not clear to me from here.
But what about the reasons?
But they work as a whole.
The reasons? No?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm
why I ask that question? Because it seems today COGAT itself did some humanitarian delivery to northern Gaza. That's why I want to ask, because I feel like is there any, how to say that, not confidence but trust from COGAT to the UN or not?
Well,
They are
I
doing
think that's
it themselves.
the way you frame that question is one to ask.
But you have confidence. You have trust with COGAT.
I mean, we work with them, right? It is clear that we don't see eye to eye on everything, and I think we've seen their. We saw the video of the convoy going through the north. This is not an operation which any UN entity was involved in.
But COGAT accusing UN didn't do its job.
Look, it's the same thing over and over again that we see in these tweets. I think we have been very clear on the job that we are doing. The job that we're doing is an opportunistic one because we just have to grab opportunities where they arise. We want to be able to do things to scale. For that, we need better coordination. We need more approvals. We need more aid to go in, and we need a humanitarian ceasefire, and we need for the hostages to be released. Just 2 days ago, a UN convoy, UNICEF convoy, was shot at, right? They were doing their job. And what happened when they were doing their job? They were shot at. Gabriel.
A follow-up to that, Steph, thank you. When these UN missions are denied access, as they were today by Israel, as you stated, what are the ramifications of that?
Well, the ramifications are pretty clear. The people who needed fuel at the hospital are not getting it, right? The generators that could have been restarted were not restarted. Food that could have been consumed was not consumed. Those are the ramifications.
And a couple other things. On the Paris meeting on Monday, do you know if the SAF and RSF are participating or not?
I do not know.
Okay. And
You may want to ask the organizers.
No problem.
From the Republic.
Sure, we will. And on Martin Griffiths, can you give us any timeline on when a replacement might be named for our own planning purposes?
No, the search is ongoing. Obviously, the aim is to have as short of a interregnum as possible to ensure smooth handover. Martin has already said he's staying till the end of June, which is good. It's giving us more time. And
just to clear up a rumor coming out of Mexico, there's some rumors out of Mexico that there's some rumors out of Mexico that the Mexican government is they will be sending a letter to the SG asking for the SG to then forward that to the Security Council on the removal of Ecuador from the UN or suspension. Has the SG received any letter from Mexico?
We have, as far as I know, we've not seen any letter yet. I will check again. When the Secretary General gets a letter from a member state asking him to circulate that letter, he does so. That's his role, in a sense, as secretary to the legislative bodies. As I said yesterday, the issue of removal of any member state is up to member states themselves, and it's enshrined in Article 5 of the charter of this organization. Cinco. I was going to say something else, but Alan, then Tony.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have a short question, please. Yesterday, two of my colleagues working in Vesti Lugansk TV company were injured during the shelling from Ukrainian side. Do you have any comment regarding this?
I mean, we have no particular details of this, but we've seen the reports. But what I can tell you is that it shows yet again the risks that journalists all over the world take in trying to cover stories. We saw, I think, Palestinian journalists working for a Turkish news entity in Gaza, and our colleagues in Sudan talked about the Sudanese journalists who are all struggling. I think journalists all over the world are struggling to do their job in safety. Tony, sorry.
Shukran, Steph. My question is a name, Sigrid Kaag. Any
Sigrid
updates?
Kaag, yes.
Where were her abouts? What is she up to?
What she's up to, I assume she's working. No, I know she is working. She's between Amman and Jerusalem and traveling some. If my memory serves me correct, she should be here before the end of the month to brief the Security Council, at which point, as she always does, I have no doubt she will be delighted to stop and answer your questions.
Thank you.
On that note, unless I hear anybody opening up a microphone, I shall release you for lunch. And happy weekend. Happy Human Space Flight Day.